From the highs of dot-com bubbles to the lows of crash of IPOs to building Naukri.com, name the biggest startup success story in India, and the chances are that you'll find Sanjeev Bikhchandani's name there. Great pleasure for us to have you today.
Thank you so much for calling me.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Sanjeev. Always a pleasure. You know, I've read at a lot of places that Sanjeev Bikhchandani went without a salary for a prolonged period of time.
I quit my job in 1990 and became an entrepreneur. In 97, we launched Naukri. For the first 7 years, I drifted and we did maybe 20 small things.
How did the idea of Naukri come about for you? Do you feel the basic model of a successful business enterprise, is it still the same?
There are some fundamentals that haven't changed and they will never change. Successful businesses are built on deep customer insights.
The word startup today is a very jazzy word, right? Everybody wants to be in a startup space. Let's say there's ease of availability of capital if the idea is right. Somewhere, the notion of the correct brand of corporate governance, is that missing from the startup space?
But I don't think we can disregard the regulator.
What do you think should be the way forward?
Founders have to be aware of the regulation and the regulator and the regulator's concerns.
From an Indian context, what do you think the policy making, the importance which is being given, is it political in nature? Is it really helping the businesses? When the Zomato IPO was coming up, we were speaking to market experts, and the conventional market experts were saying that how are you going to invest in a company where profitability supposedly is nowhere on the horizon? It's coming up, whenever, and yet, the level of interest, the level of impact. Do you sense in this new India, maybe people who are 5 to 7 years in their job business, are they more adventurous today?
So, Zomato IPO succeeded not because, Gen Z bought it. It succeeded because it's
Hello and welcome to the Power Exchange here on AIM Media Network. With us today is someone who actually needs absolutely no introduction for anybody. The one and only Sanjeev Bikhchandani, well-known investor, entrepreneur, actually the father of the story of internet being converted into an economic landscape. From the highs of dot-com bubbles to the lows of crash of IPOs to building Naukri.com and what else you have. Name the biggest startup success story in India, and the chances are that you'll find Sanjeev Bikhchandani's name there. Great pleasure for us to have you today.
Thank you so much for calling me.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Sanjeev. Always a pleasure speaking to you. I want you to know that our audiences here on AIM Media are tremendously excited about this conversation. The first question which people wanted me to pose to you was your constant reference in your public utterances about dealing with failure. Don't give up, right? What does that mean? Throw some light on this. Why does this phrase, don't give up, mean so much to you?
See, if you're an entrepreneur and you are struggling and you're bootstrapping and you're starting out, chances are that you will struggle for a while. There will be financial hardship. You will fail perhaps several times, right? But you're not really a failure till you quit. Because once you quit, you are a failed entrepreneur. While you're trying, you're simply not successful yet. So keep on struggling. It's okay.
There's no shame in continuing to struggle, and therefore there should be no shame in acknowledging that you failed at some stage.
Well, you haven't failed. If you keep on trying.
At what stage do you come to this conclusion that it's not working out for you?
Then you pivot. Then you do something new. I quit my job in 1990. Became an entrepreneur. Very small, did a few modest things. In 97, we launched Naukri. For the first 7 years, I drifted and we did maybe 20 small things. Teaching, training, salary surveys, trademarks database, report writing, I was a part-time journalist for a while. I enjoyed journalism, by the way.
Yeah?
Yeah, I was in the Pioneer newspaper.
Yes, of course.
I was the consulting editor for the career supplement called Avenues. And some of my closest friends are from there.
But talk us through this time period that you're talking about, this 1990 to 1997, because I've read at a lot of places that Sanjeev Bikhchandani went without a salary for a prolonged period of time.
The company could not pay me a salary. So I used to teach on weekends as visiting faculty in management schools in and around Delhi to earn 250 rupees an hour. And if I could teach for 4 hours a weekend or 5 hours a weekend, I'd make 1,000 rupees, 1,200 rupees in a week, which would be 5,000 a month, which in the early 90s was enough to survive on.
And you lived in Delhi, right? For this
I lived in Delhi and my parents' house, so I didn't have to pay rent.
Oh, that must have helped your cause.
Yeah.
But to all our audiences watching you today, when you say that you did what 20 odd things and you survived with this sort of remuneration of $250 an hour, at the time when you were going through it, talk us through your thought process. What was it that was constantly pushing you forward?
So at that time there was no mobile phones, there was no internet. So essentially I had fallen out of touch with all my classmates from business school. Now, I'm Ahmedabad was this competitive place, competitive batch, you are always benchmarking and comparing. Now, if you're not in touch with your classmates, there's no benchmarking and comparing, so you don't feel poor. So they're moving ahead in life, they've got overseas postings, they're buying bigger, better cars, they're living in South Delhi, I was living in Trans-Yamuna. But all of that didn't matter to me simply because I was not in touch.
Was that a conscious decision that you took, that you're not going to be in touch with your classmates?
No, that's not true.
It would have pulled you down?
No, that's not basically, we were doing our own thing, there was no mobile phones. Okay, now there were landlines, right? In any case, at that time, there was an 8-year waiting list for a landline. Okay, so we weren't so connected. And when email and mobile phones came, we sort of got connected again. But by that time, the worst period of my financially, my worst period was over.
So, is there any anecdote which comes to your mind, any experience which has stayed with you all these years? And now, now that you're such a tremendously successful and an inspiring figure, any story that comes to your mind in that time period when you were supposedly struggling?
It's about, so one or two things. So I've quit my job and I've got a total savings of 68,000 rupees.
In 1990?
1990.
That's not a bad sum to
Not
have.
a bad sum. Yeah. Right? I had been saving money because knowing fully well I will need this money.
Okay.
When I quit and, we wouldn't call it a startup in those days, and that jargon didn't exist, when I did my own business, right? But I'm from a middle class family, father was in the government, mom homemaker. So I was desperately hooked on to my salary. I need a monthly check. Right? I'm paranoid, I'm afraid, right? And so I said, this 66,000 rupees is 1 year's salary. It was 1 year's salary for me, my last job. I said, if I stretch it, I can make it 2 years.
All right.
Yeah. Tighten your belt, I can make it 2 years. But what after that, right? So then a friend of mine told me, now I never invested in the stock market, okay? A friend of mine came to me and he says, there's this company, Bindal Agro, इसका सुना है bonus issue आएगा, तो share price double होगा. Why don't you buy? Right? In those days, there were some 21 stock exchanges, there was no equity research, there was no NSE, there was no SEBI, there was no SEBI Act, there was the concept of, you basically, people bought and sold shares depending on what their friends told them. And I didn't buy and sell shares. I was not in.
You weren't in stock market?
Not at all. But I said, share price double, which means 66,000 rupees ka double ho jayega. So then I'll have 4 years of money. I was like, wow, fantastic. This is a good cushion. So I went to a friend's father. He was a sub-broker in the Delhi Stock Exchange of some other big broker. And I told him, uncle, सुना है कि बिंदल एग्रो में bonus issue आएगा. तो I want to invest 66,000 rupees. I'll keep 2,000 rupees reserve. 66,000 I will put in Bindal Agro.
Out of the net saving that you had in your bank account, 68 में से you said 66 I'm going to invest.
So he told me, बेटा अगर bonus issue आएगा, so why don't you buy on forward and use this 60,000 as margin money, then you will make 10 times. So I said, man, that's 10 years of salary. Okay. So I said, okay. So So I put that 6,000 rupees, in as margin money to buy shares of Bindal Agro. Now I learned the hard way 2-3 things. Number one, if you're buying based on a rumor, you better buy early in the rumor, when the rumor just starts. Second, the rumor had better be correct. Okay, that's when share price will double, right? Now, I didn't know this, but I was one of the last guys buying. So the share price had already doubled because the rumor had started long back.
Right.
Second, the rumor was wrong.
You lost the money.
So after 1 week, he calls me up and says, bonus issue didn't happen. Share price halved. So he said, he called me up 1 week and said, better now we are square. So I was down from 68,000 to 2,000.
My God, Sanjeev Bikhchandani's first big ticket investment.
And
I
I did not ever touch the stock market till 2018 from then, from 1990 to about 28 years.
So lesson number one, folks, don't believe rumors, right?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
if you want to believe rumors, when you start believing them early on in life, early on in the game.
Okay. So that is when I said, what do I do? And I had quit my job, and that is when I said, okay, fine, I've got a biodata. I'm Ahmedabad, total of 5 years experience. Maybe I can teach in business schools. So the MBA, the business school wave was just starting then. There weren't these 3,000-4,000 business schools then. There were just a few, but they were coming up, very rapidly. So I went to a business school, IMT Ghaziabad, through a friend. I went in as a director. Given my CV, I was fortunate enough to get an assignment to teach marketing in service industries. I took a paper, and I worked hard at that. That did well, so I got good feedback. So I kept getting a course to do every term.
Okay.
And they would pay me 250 or 275 rupees an hour, and that sustained me.
So that kept you going.
Yeah.
For the time period.
So ultimately, you've got to live by your wits. So my first jugaad failed, which is stock market. My second jugaad was more in my control, and it worked.
Teaching, and then the story started to unfold. How did the idea of Naukri come about for you?
If you're keen to do a startup and become an entrepreneur, and you have an imagination, you get 3 ideas a day. Right? And every idea looks good when you first think of it. After 1 week, most ideas look lousy, right? But let's say we have 1,000 ideas. You are lucky if you end up doing one. Right? So when I was in my last job, I was in a company called HMM. It's now called GlaxoSmithKline. I was in marketing, and I was working on the brand Horlicks. And the company had other brands. There was Boost, there was Brill Cream, there was Eno, there were other brands, 5-6 other good brands. It was a good company. So the junior marketing team would sit in an open hall. And I was junior. So there were some 7, 8, 10 of us in that open hall. I could watch everybody and see what they were doing, and I could hear what they were saying on the phone. Open hall. And I observed that when the office copy of Business India came in, everybody would read it from the back. Why? Because there were 35 to 40 pages of appointment ads at the back of the magazine. It was the number 1 appointment ad medium for managers in the country in those days. And they would flip through the ads, and they may not even read the article, they pass on the magazine. And I said, this is weird behavior. People are reading appointment ads, and they're not reading the articles. And journalists work very hard to write the articles, but people are reading the ads, okay, more than the articles. And then they would start talking. There's a job going here. There's a job going there. What do you think? And that's when I got this insight that jobs are a high interest category of information. Everybody, all my friends, my colleagues, they're all MBAs from the IIMs and good business schools. They all are bothered about their jobs, and they all are bothered about their career and their trajectories, and they are constantly benchmarking. Now, they will not apply for these jobs. because they're already in a very good company, very good job, but they're still very interested. So that's insight number one. Insight number two, every week, 1 or 2 or 3 headhunters would call up and try and headhunt one or the other of my colleagues. And I could hear the conversation on the phone. So I knew it was a headhunter. And I realized that every time it's a different headhunter, working for a different company, a different job, and these jobs are not advertised. So I realized there may be hundreds, maybe thousands of headhunters out there, servicing maybe 10,000 companies, maybe 100,000 jobs, and these jobs are not advertised, which means that what appears in print is the tip of the iceberg. There's a much larger market below the surface. Because see, print advertising is expensive, time consuming, so you would much rather go through a headhunter and it's faster. Right? And when you couple that with the insight that jobs are a high interest category of information, it means that if somebody were to aggregate all this information and keep it live and current and make it accessible, it'll be a powerful product. It'll find users will come. Now, this insight I had in 1990. I said there's something here, but I don't know what to do with it. So it became one of those file and forget kind of ideas. And I saw the internet for the first time 6 years later. And that's when I revived this insight.
So who was the first person who cut the check for Naukri.com to come into play?
Okay, so you're talking about investor?
Yes.
So
you started it yourself?
Yeah,
yes.
we bootstrapped.
Bootstrapped.
We bootstrapped it, right? We didn't raise outside money. There was no venture capital then. We didn't know what venture capital was. We simply, I put 2 guys onto it, and so there was this organization called Central News Agency.
Yes.
Madras Hotel mein tha. Okay. Now, Central News Agency would get all newspapers and magazines from around the world and all over India into one place.
Right.
So if you wanted, in Delhi, you wanted Malayalam Manorama,
you'd go there.
You'd get it by the afternoon, morning edition.
Right.
Because it'll come on the coach flight from Trivandrum, and it'll find its way here by 12 o'clock. Okay. So I used to go there every day and figure out kaun se akhbar mein aaj appointment aaye hain, and pick them up. Bring them to my office, and there were 2 data entry guys.
You'd physically go to the office. It's not as if someone was going on your behalf.
No. So once I had the schedule, I said on Mondays, it's this paper from the city. On Tuesdays, once I had that matrix, then I could send somebody else. कि आज ये वाला अखबार ले आना. So शुरू में पहले 1-2 महीने I went myself. Right? We'd pick it up, and we would enter it, and we'd upload it on the internet. And sure enough, traffic began to come. We didn't have money to advertise. We were broke, but traffic began to come because it was a powerful magnet for traffic, because jobs are a high interest category of information. So the value prop is very simple. All the jobs in print in one place. Right? So if you're based in Delhi and the ad appeared in Hindu in Madras, you'll find it here. And we keep it live for a month. So if the ad came 15 days ago and you missed the paper, you can come here and find it. That's the value prop. All the ads in print in one place.
So would you say, Sanjeev, that from the time, like you so eloquently putting out how you executed an idea and the lifespan of an idea, let's now come to 2025. Do you feel the basic model of a successful business enterprise, of a successful startup, is it still the same? Or do you think everything has changed?
Look, there are some fundamentals that haven't changed, and they will never change. Okay, and one learning for me is that successful businesses are built on deep customer insights. Now, what was the insight that I had? Number one, everybody reads Business India from the back. क्यों पढ़ते हैं पीछे से? Because they're very interested in jobs. Insight number 2 was a market insight. A set of market insights. There are hundreds of headhunters, maybe thousands of them. There are lakhs of jobs out there, and these jobs are not advertised. So if you can aggregate them in one place, you have a winner. ये 2 insight
is applicable even today.
Yes.
So
Now, what is the insight about? The insight is some consumer behavior, some market characteristic, some idea of some unsolved problem. कि I know if I do this, the customer will come. मेरा माल बिक जाएगा without me having to sell. So if you are solving an unsolved problem, there's a decent probability that the customer will buy without you having to sell.
But here's a sort of a counter to that, Sanjeev. You know, what I hear a lot these days from tech entrepreneurs, from startup founders, is that while the idea is there and the tech will be there, and let's say the investment is also there, when it comes to really safeguarding the interests of the people who may be trading with you, your daily consumers, like take Paytm for example, right? Vijay Shekhar Sharma's viewpoint is out there. KYC is a very expensive business for me, so I'm not going to do KYC. I see a lot of blockchain companies which are now coming up are making the same kind of an argument. This business of not doing KYC, why do you think that, why is it such a difficult task? Should it be there, should it not be there?
So see, we are not in that business. So none of our businesses actually require that kind. We're not in the financial services.
Yes, sure.
Okay. But look, I think increasingly regulators will put in place measures which will safeguard the consumer more and more. And as companies, we have to listen to the regulator. I don't think we can disregard the regulator. In the long run, it's good for us as well, as companies, because that's how you win customer trust and keep it. And without customer trust, you will not succeed.
Because regulators and particularly a lot of these fintech companies, I'm increasingly, there are so much conflicts which are taking place. Is it to do with the fact that the word startup today is a very jazzy word, right? Everybody wants to be in a startup space. Well, there's ease of availability of capital if the idea is right. Somewhere the notion of the correct brand of corporate governance, is that missing from the startup space?
See, okay, I'll come to corporate governance. See, I'll tell you one thing. If your regulator is RBI, you got to listen to RBI. If your regulator is SEBI, you got to listen to SEBI. If your regulator is IRDA, you got to listen to IRDA. Now, if you disagree with them, you could go and talk to them and say, this is what I think is a problem. Can you help me here? It's a conversation. But I don't think you can disregard the regulator. Okay, I think हिंदुस्तान में रहना है तो बस you have to work with the regulator.
तो ये conflict क्यों है ये? Startups और regulators के बीच why is this conflict?
Well, I wouldn't say it's general. एक दो बार अगर हुआ है, I think perhaps it's because the regulation came in afterwards, and business is already being done in a certain way. So there was time to adjust, not adjust. Regulator, took action. Then you had to adjust. I think partly it's because regulators, by definition, are conservative. They are not adventurous. They are not these great risk takers. Because the job of the regulator very often is to protect the little guy. Right? And they will not take a risk where they believe the retail investor, the retail shareholder, the small guy who's banking with you or using your payment gateway can get hurt.
Because I read a statement of yours that governance begins and ends in the founder's head. So, there's Bharat Pay, there's Go Mechanic, we're seeing what's happening with Razor Pay. And you're saying that, look, don't be in a conflict with the regulator. What do you think should be the way forward then?
I think, first of all, founders have to be aware of the regulation and the regulator and the regulator's concerns. Then they have to comply, and then if they find something is unreasonable, they have to go and talk to the regulator. Say, listen, here is, and make a representation. Either directly or through an industry body, very often through an industry body. Because regulators and governments would prefer to talk to collectives rather than individual companies.
Why should that be the case? Don't you think that there should be a mechanism where...
People want to play safe. People say that, look, if it's an industry-wide problem, we look at it. If it's one company's problem, so, it's...
Alag baat.
So regulators are conservative, fundamentally. Regulators protect the little guy. That's the psychology.
Is
And
it-
understand that psychology.
You know,
And live with that.
and therefore, basically, whatever your business model is, I mean, you got to figure a way out of of keeping your business model around. Look at ed tech platforms, for instance. Look at Byju's, right? Suddenly the share price is going through the moon, and suddenly one fine day you find that all is not well. KYC norms are not there, and then the story becomes completely different. Is it a regulator's problem, you'd say?
No, so it's
Or you think it's corporate governance?
So I'll tell you something. When you go public, the regulations and the scrutiny and the microscope is much more sharply focused, because now the public money is involved. Right? When you are private and you've taken venture capital PE money, then it's a finite set of large institutions who are meant to be professional investors, and the expectation is that they do the homework and the diligence before they go in, and they'll have enough mechanisms to supervise and control and monitor. So it's possible that a company blows up, but if it's private and it takes down a lot of money with it, but that money belongs to 20 people. It does not belong to 2 million people who are retail shareholders. When the money belongs to 20 people, it's a much smaller offense as opposed to when it belongs to 3 million people who are public shareholders. Right? So that becomes it'll make headlines, but it is a less egregious offense as compared to a public company doing the same thing.
So, is this the reason you'd say that explains why a significantly high number of startups in India actually fail?
No, that is a phenomenon worldwide. That startups are risky, and some succeed, many fail. See, fundamentally, startups are Darwinian in nature, which basically means was 1 lakh लोगों ने try किया, 100 succeed हुए. Right? Now, the guys who fail, their job is to try again. So then they can come up next time around in the top 100. Right? And some will try again, some will not. That's life.
You've got to live with it.
That's the nature of the startup economy. It's Darwinian in nature.
But do you think from an Indian context, the word startup has also become a deeply political subject, for instance. You listen to the political speeches being made on rally capitals in Patna or Lucknow or wherever. I always find everyone wants to talk about a startup. देखिए कितने successful startups हमारे हो गए हैं. From an Indian context, what do you think the policy making, the importance which is being given, is it political in nature? Is it really helping the businesses?
So I'll tell you. First, let us understand the relevance and importance of startups for the Indian economy.
Right.
So I began working in 1984. That's about 41 years ago.
Right.
My first job was straight out of college. I was working in an ad agency, Lintes. 1 year in Delhi, 2 years in Bombay. If I look back to the business landscape in 1984 and compare it to now, there's been a sea change. It's completely different. Right? But if you look at what are the companies and sectors which have driven this change, or where this change has happened, whether it's in terms of attracting investment, growth, creating employees, jobs, right? These very often are industries and companies that did not exist or barely existed in 1984. So entirely new. So IT services barely existed. IT-enabled services, which is your BPOs, did not exist. The internet did not exist. Mobile telephony did not exist. Digital payments did not exist. Private sector banks barely existed. Legacy banks existed, but no new banks. Private sector insurance companies did not exist. Private sector telephone companies did not exist. Organized retail did not exist. E-commerce did not exist. None of these things existed. Now, yet today, they are the ones which are dominating the discourse, and they're creating the buzz and the excitement. Now, a lot of this is due to startups. Okay, so startups are important. Startups are engine of growth. Infosys was a startup in 1984. HCL was started in 1984, giant companies today. Look at the market cap, look at the brand they've built, look at the employment created, look at the impact they've made. Okay? So startups matter, but they matter over a few decades, not in 3 years or 2 years or 1 year.
So are we still, what you would say, are we still in the middle path?
No, so here's the lesson. There will always be startups. And the giant companies of tomorrow will be companies who are startups today, many of them. At the end of the day, Zomato was founded in 2008, right? 17 years ago. Look at the impact it's had. Right? All of e-commerce, founded in the 2010, 2012. Blinkit, Flipkart. They were startups very recently. And look at the impact they've had. They've changed our lives.
But just on
and therefore startups are important. Now when Zomato succeeds, let's take I'm on the board of Zomato, so I know about Zomato.
Yes.
So Bhupendra Chaubey was the son of a government school teacher in Muktsar. From there, he made it to IIT. From there, he made it to Bain Consulting. And from there, he started Zomato. And now it is where it is. Right? So when Bhupendra Chaubey comes out, imagine the inspirational impact for every schoolboy or girl in every small town of India.
But here's the story about Zomato. When the Zomato IPO was coming up, we were speaking to market experts, and the conventional market experts were saying that how are you going to invest in a company where profitability supposedly is nowhere on the horizon. It's coming up, whenever, and yet, the level of interest, the level of impact. Do you sense in this new India, within this age group of say 25 to 30, maybe people who are 5 to 7 years in their job business, are they more adventurous today?
So, Zomato IPO succeeded not because, Gen Z bought it. It succeeded because institutions invested. Large institutions invested, foreign investors invested, Indian investors invested. Gen Z also invested. Right? It was a phenomenon which was universal. But it was not a retail-led IPO, if that's what you're saying. Right? And I think when Zomato went public in 2021, there was sufficient belief in the company among the investor community that it's okay if profits are after 3 years. It's okay. And that's the way it panned out.
Is there, how do you quantify, success for a startup? Because it's like X has to become 5X. How quickly this 5X, 10X valuation is being achieved?
No, so that is not the way.
That's not the way.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, sure.
And the first thing is, boss, do you have a customer? Is the customer paying you? Is he paying you a price higher than your cost? Now, if that happens, and if that is happening, and that is happening repeatedly, then chances are you have a viable business as long as you can get enough customers. That's the first thing to achieve. Now, if that happens, you will also get a valuation. Because then the investor will come to you and pay you a valuation because you have done something which the customer is finding useful. Right? In the long run, you will always be valued of an earnings multiple. You can only sustain a valuation, especially in public markets, without making a profit only for so long. Right? And therefore, companies have to, sooner or later, follow the norms of commercial prudence and achieve scale and profit.
For how long will loss be looked as cash burn?
देखो private में तो आप कर सकते हो because you're talking about convincing a few institutional investors.
Right.
And as long as you can show a future that आगे जाके ये होगा. Right. But public में you can only do it so long.
Okay. Let's look at the other side of India's corporate story. Right. There's a great story of startups that you've spoken to us at length about. Let's look at the legacy business houses in this country. Right. There is a belief that what is actually happening is that all the innovation is being done by the startup community. But when it comes to the legacy, the Ambanis, the Adanis, the Ruiyas, and what else have you in this country, it's at the end of the day just operational management of the businesses which were perhaps set up by the previous generation. Firstly, do you agree with that?
No, I disagree with that. I think that's an unfair characterization. There is innovation being done by startups, but equally there's been innovation done in large companies. Because large companies have the resources to put on the table and take big, bold bets, which may fail, but or they make losses for a long time before they succeed. You look at green hydrogen, for example. अब वो छोटी कंपनी कैसे करेगी? Resource नहीं है.
So you require someone like an Adani to come in and
you need a large balance sheet, right? So big bold bets are very often taken by large companies. They are usually not taken by small companies. Sometimes they are, but it's not easy because small companies. See, understand one thing: जो venture capitalist होता है, उसका time horizon maximum 7-8 साल होता है. Because he's got a fund, he has to return the money back to somebody else. So the way a venture capitalist works is they raise money from other people. These people are called LPs, limited partners. They put together a fund and they invest in companies and they got to exit in 7, 8, 10 years. They got to sell those shares at a profit so that they can give money back at a profit to the people who gave them the money. That's the model. Which means that you are talking about an exit in 7, 8, 9 years. Now, if you need a big bold bet, where the big profits will come after 20 years.
You require big money.
You require, it's not a venture fundable model. Venture capital नहीं कर पाएगा. उसको तो 8 साल में exit चाहिए, 9 साल में exit चाहिए. Right? So that is when, large corporations with big balance sheets and strong cash flows are uniquely positioned to do that kind of stuff. Indian large companies are taking those bets. They're taking those bets. Enough of them. You look at the Tatas, you look at the Mahindras, you look at, all this defense tech, ultimately it's big companies doing it.
What Baba Kalyani is now doing.
Exactly. No, those are big bold bets. We're innovating. And, profit आएगा, लेकिन पता नहीं कब आएगा.
जब भी आएगा.
आएगा.
But, there is, let's look at it in the context of what's happening in America, for instance. Right? I saw a tweet of yours where you were arguing that this proximity, this bromance which existed between Donald Trump and Elon Musk may potentially lead America to a state of dystopia. Just talk us through that. This corporate linkages with politicians.
There needs to be separation of powers adequately.
India में है क्या?
India is better than the US.
कहाँ है sir?
India is better than the US. Look, if you can have a guy come from the private sector and start slashing government and sacking people, India is better.
No, but is it not true that most of government loans are meant only and only for the big boys? Such as Adani, I'm putting it on the table.
Yeah, I do not know if those are government loans. Okay.
LIC decides to buy, a substantial chunk of shares, back a business which is being run by Adanis. Do I look at this as par for the course?
Are they making a profit? And is the share price appreciating? Is LIC making money on it?
So there's a difference. That's a difference which you.
No. Look, I'm not defending any one group over here, but let me put it this way: after what we've seen in America in the last 3-4 months, I can tell you that the government is more in charge in India and is run less by the big business as compared to what we saw in the US in the last 3-5 months. Somebody can donate $160 million or however many, I do not know, get a president elected and then say, I'm in the White House.
हमारे electoral bonds है?
But it's not as if any one party gave all the money, one business gave all the money and then control the government. I have not seen the Indian government be controlled by private sector interests the way we have seen in the US in recent times.
It may be there, but you're saying it's not at that level.
Yeah, business ultimately will work with government. Question is, आप वो सरकार कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं या सरकार का काम कर रहे हैं, थोड़ा सा इन्फ्लुएंस कर रहे हैं. What we saw in the US in recent months, and hopefully it's waning now, was I thought quite alarming.
Do you think? What's the lesson you would say we should take in India from whatever we have witnessed in America play out between Elon Musk and Donald Trump? There was Musk, he wants to bring in Starlink. Hey, lo and behold, there's Mukesh Ambani and Sunil Mittal, right? Musk wants to bring in Tesla, Well, lo and behold, suddenly we are under pressure. Do you think this Republican regime for America, how would you rate it in an Indian context for the sake of Indian business?
Look, we have to do business in America. There is no choice. It's the most powerful country in the world. Also, if you have a geopolitical sort of issue with China, we do need powerful allies. Right? In order to do business in America, if you've got to make some concessions, कि भाई बर्बन पे ड्यूटी कम कर दी, it's okay. हार्ले डेविडसन पे ड्यूटी कम, it's okay.
Give and take.
मतलब अब वो है उनका चाहिए तो भाई दे दो यार, आपको भी कुछ मिल जाएगा जो आपको चाहिए.
But let me ask you a slightly political question here. You know, in WhatsApp circles and on social media chatter, there is a sense which has been created that India now is powerful enough, big enough to take on America. I mean, do you think sometimes this sense of false pride, false bravado is becoming like an albatross around the neck of the power dealers?
See, a few WhatsApp messages don't determine foreign policy. I mean, they should not. Okay. So I'm pretty sure the people who are in the government, the people who are actually taking these decisions, deciding these positions, are smart enough to understand what will work for us and what will not work for us. I would not go too much by WhatsApp messages.
No, but you know, when
कोई भी कुछ भी बोल देता है, आप लोग मान लेते हैं.
When a Dr. Jaishankar, let's say the foreign minister, he goes to America and he talks really tough to America. How do we look at this? Do we say, wow, great show?
No. When has he talked tough? And what has he said to America?
No, he goes to America and he says that, look, those days of fooling India, this is just before 2024 Lok Sabha elections. He was in DC at an event and he very publicly was almost chiding, almost criticizing the American top policymakers. Why was India being hyphenated with Pakistan was his fulcrum.
I think that's a fair
and look at what's happened today.
No, hold it. I think that's a fair ask. India doesn't want to be hyphenated with Pakistan. And no matter, and I don't think it's happening, right? It may be happening in some media circles, but actually the Indian economy is 10x that of Pakistan. The Indian market is 10x that of Pakistan. That alone makes all the difference. And if we are growing at 6-7% and they're growing at 2-3%, the gap is widening. So people in the West especially will have to do business with India. And because they have to, our economy is too important. Our market is too large. Our supply base of talent is extremely large.
So you wouldn't be concerned by all the geopolitical turbulence which we're witnessing right now.
When the dust settles, you will see that actually, India is okay.
Our market will still win the day.
The size of the economy, the growth and the momentum will ensure that India matters.
Okay, so let's come back to India for a moment. And this entire debate, there is money, there is economy, and then there is a happiness quotient, right? A lot has been spoken about recently. How many hours should an individual be working? This big 70-hour work week.
उसके बाद 90 हो गया था ना when the L&T CMD spoke.
That's right.
No, see, I'll tell you, and I have been asked this question several times, especially since we run Naukri. My view may not be very popular, but see, you got to do what it takes to get the job done. Okay? Or the truth also is, बिना मेहनत और बिना sustained मेहनत
मलाई नहीं मिलेगी.
You don't achieve anything great, right? So you take any job, yaar. You take any job. So Bhupendra, you've been in the media, right? And you are in the media, and you've been on TV channels. But if news is breaking at 11 o'clock at night, you got to be there, man.
Yeah.
You can't say, yaar, 9 to 5, mera work-life balance hai. Yaar, news, please break tomorrow. You lose your job. And if your camera guys say, Bhupendra, yaar, dekho yaar, ab to, ab 5:30 के बाद नहीं काम करेगा. Sorry, yaar. You'll sack him. Right? You got a job to do, you do it. You got a deadline to meet to produce a piece of code as a programmer. You got a deadline to meet. Right? It may not be fair, but that's life. Okay. अगर चाइना में वो गलवान में चाइनीज आ गए 7 बजे रात को, आज जवान को ऐसे बस अब तो यार वर्क लाइफ बैलेंस हो गया हमारा, हम नहीं करेंगे. Where will you be?
So you just got to give it all. There's no notion of the 70-hour, 90-hour.
No. So it's like this. it's not sustainable to have a 90-hour work week all the time. It's simply not sustainable. Neither can it be an expectation by an organization कि हमारे सारे लोग. But yes, when the situation demands it, you got to do it. See, the other way to understand this is that, see, I was in a TV program on this issue, or a panel discussion, and my good friend Manish Sabharwal of Team Lease, he put it very succinctly. He says, "Dekho, there are people who will view the prospect of working 70 hours or 80 hours a week as an opportunity. And there are others who will view it as oppression. Now, you decide who you are.
Which side you want to take?
You will decide. Okay. So, the other way I put it is that, look, there's an achievement mindset and there's an entitlement mindset. Now, an entitlement mindset will tell you that, yaar, ab to ho gaya boss, 9 se 5, ab to yaar, go home, open a beer, watch TV. Right? And there are people who say, hey, I got a deadline to meet. I take ownership.
But do you think this debate...
Now, one more thing. The final thing I'll say is that as a young person, and this really applies to young people, you decide, are you apprenticeship? Are you in an apprenticeship for a future leadership role and position? Leadership प्रति घंटा नहीं होती, दिहाड़ी पे नहीं होती, right? Per piece rate पे नहीं होती, okay? और 9 to 5 नहीं होती. अगर आपको लीडर बनना है किसी भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में, whether this one or the next one you go to, you have to take ownership and you have to have an achievement mindset.
I think that's a very good advice. That's a very good advice that you give. But while I was listening to you, Sanjeev, I was just thinking that.
आप बताओ, when you began your career, when was it?
I used to work 24/7. 1999.
That's really bad. You were oppressed, man.
Yeah. Totally. And my boss at that time used to say, I'm looking for an intelligent person to go and report in the morning, and I would be on an overnight shift. And I thought I was an intelligent person, so I would end up working 24 hours. But just look at it in the context of penetration of AI tools now. On one hand, AI is going to take away jobs. Then on the other hand, the 70 to 90-hour debate that we're talking about. How do you view artificial intelligence from a vantage position of India, where our focus, politically speaking, remains jobs and more jobs?
See, AI is happening. You can't stop it. Okay? Now, if it's happening, you better do it or it'll be done to you. So you got to be on the right side of AI. Which basically means that get familiar with it, know it.
Embrace it.
Know how to use it. Know how to do your job better with it. Right? And that's as an individual or as a company or a department. As a country, we need to develop enough AI tools, right, that we are on top of it. It doesn't get done to us, we do it.
I read about you that you often talk about the first principle thinking. What is this notion of first principle thinking in the context of the present day ecosystem?
When I'm in doubt on most things, right, I go and talk to the customer. Because ये सब ठीक है, but let's talk to what is the customer saying, what's he doing. So now in Naukri, right, for example, so we have got a team of 150 AI engineers working, and they're doing a lot of things with AI to make the product work better. Now, very often, this is guided by knowledge of the customer, knowledge of the client. What are they doing? How are they using it? What are the differences? What is competition doing? What else can we do? We've got this piece of AI. How can it make our clients more productive? And that's how we innovate. So for Naukri, you might say that, listen, if AI decimates jobs, then Naukri ke client kam honge. Naukriyan kam hongi. That's not good for us. But on the other hand, we're using AI to innovate, and we are also conscious of the fact that every time there's new technology, there is innovation and disruption both. Right. This is very Schumpeterian. Schumpeter, creative destruction. You create, you destroy. And I go back to 1985. I was 1 year into my job, and Rajiv Gandhi became Prime Minister. And he said, I'm going to bring computers into banks. Was all India banking went very, very crazy. We lose our jobs. But sure enough, computers came into banks, but they increased the productivity. Nobody lost jobs.
So is that the change?
So now that doesn't mean it'll always happen.
Yeah, sure.
But all I'm saying is technology may present a threat. It also presents an opportunity.
What would you, if let's say you had an opportunity and you had a white canvas in front of you, in India's skilling ecosystem, we have a skill development ministry, but in India's skilling ecosystem, what would Sanjeev Bikhchandani, with all his years of experience, what would he do to that skilling ecosystem?
So I've been saying it for a long time. Okay, that let's understand how somebody acquires a skill. One individual. A skill is acquired through repeated practice. Right? It could be any skill. So a skill to solve a maths problem and clear the IIT entrance exam. You learn the concept once, but then you practice 100 problems based on that concept. It's repeated practice. Okay, and then if you're good at it, you clear the exam. And that's for every. How does very often this repeated practice is on the job? How does a 14-year-old underage boy become a champion automobile mechanic? He joins the neighborhood automobile repair shop as a mundu. He's doing odd jobs and carrying stuff. He's observing. He learns on the job. In 5 years, he has acquired enough knowledge and skills and expertise to call himself a mechanic. Right? It's repeated practice on the job. So the skilling ecosystem, while there is a role for classroom, it has to be married with repeated practice on the job. And therefore, I think, and this apprenticeship system, if done well, holds promise.
So let me then in conclusion ask you, Sanjeev, you've pretty much done everything in your life, from experiencing deep failures that you've spoken about to dizzying success. If I was to ask you to name one unfinished agenda, what's that one thing you feel, yaar, abhi karna hai ye? Kuch bacha hai, kuch aisa?
So, I have reached a stage where actually I don't do it myself. We invest in startups. We have invested in more than 130 startups till now. Some have succeeded. Some have succeeded wildly. Zomato policy bazaar. Some have succeeded. Some are succeeding. Some are probably failing. So if we can invest in enough startups that go on to solve big problems, I think we would have achieved a lot. And these startups can, outlive me.
I was reading a comment of yours that you're regretting your investment in Ashoka.
I was okay. So I want to clarify that.
I was just wondering. What do you mean by that?
No, I'm not. I think Ashoka is a great place. I think there are some things to be fixed, and they will get fixed. And I'm not leaving.
You're not leaving. You're right. Okay, so that's one good news point. But just before we wrap up, there's this whole conflict which exists in the world, not just in India. You look at Colombia, look at Harvard, look at how Trump is slashing, funding to what was described to be critical, open-ended thinking. Do you think the skill sets which you require to be a successful entrepreneur, are they in conflict today with what we would describe to be an open-ended thinking mindset?
Not at all. They need to work together. At the end of the day, the skill sets you need require you to be learning individual. You cannot be a learning individual unless you're curious, unless you question.
Okay. So to all our viewers today, one advice from Sanjeev Bikhchandani, one thing that all people who will be watching this broadcast should keep.
So I'll tell you. So I was interviewed by the editorial board of my school magazine just 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Right?
And which was the school?
St. Columbus.
St. Columbus.
Okay. So they came and they asked me a few questions. One of the questions was, ये जो people are trying to get rich doing this future and options and crypto when they are 16, 18, 20 years old, what's your view? And my advice was old-fashioned and conservative. I said, पहले अपने करियर के 20-30 साल में मेहनत की रोटी कमा के खाओ. ये get rich quick schemes are the road to financial ruin and disaster, as I experienced early on with Bindal Agro.
68,000 rupees becoming 2,000 rupees. All right, Sanjeev, great pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.